Aloha, my name's Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code podcast, the topic is business lessons from adventure. And my special guest is Graham Broyd, author of Backpack, Jacket, Surfboard, My Journey Across America, Then and Now. With over 40 years of experience in banking and consulting, Graham's here to share his insights from his incredible hitchhiking journey and how it influenced his leadership style and actionable insights that anyone listening can take today from to the boardroom without the need to put their thumb out on the road. Thanks for being here, Graham.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for inviting me. It's a lot of fun to be here. My sense is a little older than most of your audience, but the way I look at it, I've probably been there and done it a few times. So hopefully there's a few things I can share that will be helpful.
Absolutely. Well, to get us started, tell us, a little bit about your background and what was your vision behind deciding to write this book at this time?
Yeah, so background, just to kind of tick a few boxes. So I was a CEO of a bank in the US, RBS's US operations, probably at the time about the 20th largest bank in the US. I also ran trading operations, so a very kind of different kind of environment, big FX and rates and securities trading operations globally out of both London and New York. And at the end of my career, very different. I was doing regulatory work. I chaired a very large bank's regulatory committee dealing with governments, dealing with regulators and lawyers and the like. So I've had the fortune of doing a variety of different things. I set up my own consulting firm about 10 years ago, consulting back into the banking industry, risk management, which seem a lot of which I learned on the road with my thumb out. And also actually, very fortunately stumbled into doing a lot of work in the crypto space. Not what you would have anticipated with the kind of background I had, but I did, and it was fascinating. And I still remain very much in touch with that industry.
Wow, that is interesting. So, I'll ask you some more crypto questions later because we have some, I think there's a few things going on our side of the fence over here. But so when did you decide to write this book?
Yeah, so I went on this trip in 1980 while I was still at university. And for 40 plus years, I have told the stories from that trip. There's really about 20 separate stories. And usually by the time I get to the second or third with someone, they would say, "Oh my God, you got to write that in a book."
Of course.
And it became a theme. I almost was waiting for people to say it. And so I kind of retired about this time last year. I still do some consulting work, but I've got some time capacity. And I thought, we'll have some fun. I'll write those stories down. I'll finally do it. And I'll have a good time writing them. I'll have a good giggle, a little cry from time to time. And then I'll send them. No one was going to buy them. I was going to send them in a book, publish a book, self-published, I thought, and send them to, 30 or 40 friends, the people who said, "You've got to write that down." And I thought maybe 10 of them would read it. And that would be fun. And I thought it would take me 6 weeks. So here we are 15 months later. It's completely taken off. Got picked up by Forbes, to publish. I have 2 other books that they're going to publish as well. I spent yesterday in Philadelphia, where it looks like I am going to be invited to present my book at the Philadelphia Public Library in front of 300 people. And their present series included Hillary Clinton and Obama.
Oh my gosh. You're so
Oh my God is right.
cool.
And so, it's really converted into something I never imagined and never saw myself as a writer. Always was a storyteller. It's just been a joyful experience.
Wow. Well, what is one of your favorite sneak peek stories that you want to share with us that people can take back to the boardroom with them?
Well, I'll keep them off business initially, right? And I'll get into the business links, right? But I was just saying to someone else, right? So I'll tell you the basis of the book for context, right? So I won a scholarship when I was at university in England to come study at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. For 6 weeks. Flight out, flight back, enough for a cheap hotel, and some subsistence nutrition. So I received the scholarship. I sold my ticket to DC. I bought one to LA because I wanted to go surf Malibu Beach. I was 20. Who wants to go sit in a library? But I kept my ticket back from DC. I looked at a map. I thought, nah, I'll surf for a week. I'll hitchhike for a week. LA, DC. It's kind of just here and there. And then I'll study for 4 weeks and go home. So that was the premise, right? And so at the start, right, I flew to LA. I wanted to get to Malibu. Last time I looked, Malibu was about 30 miles north of LA. The first pictures I have of that trip in the time between LA and Malibu are of me in a bull ring in eastern Tijuana, Mexico. Wow. That's the start of the book, right? Pretty wild. Yeah. So in the end, I'll go towards the end. I reached Washington, D.C. with 5 days left for my 6-week scholarship, my 6 weeks of study. But I ended up in the Senate office building interviewing the Republican head of the Senate, who was the chief protagonist in the subject matter of which I was studying. And I was sitting there in damp jeans because I tried to wash them the night before in a sink, and they were still not properly dried, and my dusted off sneakers. So I got 5 days of study done, but returned with primary sourced, the single most important person from my research, Republican head of the Senate, direct quotes, insights, and comments, to which my professors, needless to say, were like, oh my God. So there's 2 pieces of it.
Sounds
Not
like
your typical,
it sounds
not
like
your
a
typical
wild story. Is there like a PC version and then an adult version, or is this the unfiltered version?
No, actually, it all fits. Don't worry.
Okay. We're gonna get some excitement in there. It's rated R. Okay.
A little.
Good to know.
Only a little.
Good to know. Not for children bedtime stories or anything like that.
It depends of the age. Yeah, they'll be fine. Everyone will be fine.
Okay. Wow. So how did this lesson in hitchhiking, how have you seen that kind of trickle into these last 40 years of your, being in corporate America?
Yeah, and to some extent, maybe I didn't realize it until we started doing some editorial work. So to me, these were just 20 funny stories. And then when I went through the editorial work, my first meeting, 7 people from Forbes turned up because they wanted to see what happened to the person they read about in the book. Yeah. And to some extent, they wanted to know the sequel. What did he do after all these experiences? I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that.
That's the then and now part that we added.
Yeah. And to some extent, I just hope people were amused. Were like, oh no, they said to me, there is a whole personal development structure throughout this book, and lessons learned from it. That when I went back and thought that through, I could see, blatantly. But it's not how I sat down initially to write it. It just came out that way. And I realized actually I've been a big proponent of some of the skills that I learned on that trip, throughout my career.
So I guess what comes to mind for me, because I grew up in Aspen, Colorado, and I was born right after your trip. So I was born in 1983. So I was not even a thought yet when you were doing your trip. But I remembered always being told that hitchhiking was very dangerous, right? And lots of risk there, of course, more for women than for men. I'm guessing, did that have anything to do with your choice of career and risk assessment and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And and I'll touch on a number of things in that space. First of all, I didn't realize till afterwards that actually my whole career had been a storyteller,
Hmm.
right? I always thought it was because, I don't know, I worked harder and I was good with math, and I was good with people, and that's why I progressed. And I look back in my career and realized that the skill of storytelling was really helpful. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Right, so when I was asked to be the CEO of RBS in the US, that was a build and grow story. People didn't know the institution at that time, and so I had to tell everyone what the vision was. What is the bank? Where is it going? And why is it going there? And how would it be successful? Storytelling.
Yeah.
I had to recruit people who otherwise would not have come to the bank. They were better people than the bank had been employing up until that point. And I had to convince them to make the leap of faith to come and join the institution because of where we were going and how they would enjoy it. Storytelling. Not here's more money and here's a better office or here's a better client list. Giving them a vision and telling them about it. And even back, when I sat in a trading room initially as a salesperson, you're getting economic data out and you're calling some of the largest, hedge funds and institutional managers in the world to interpret that data and the impact it would have on the market. Well, some people just give them the data, give them some math, give them some analysis. In hindsight, I realized what I was doing and why I had a niche that worked for me is I would tell quick stories. This is what just happened. This is why it happened. This is how it's going to impact the market. And this is what you should do. It had a start, a middle, and an end. And so, it's almost been a hindsight learning. And when I've gone back and visited with friends who worked with me and for me over the years, and I've told them that, they're all gone like, well, of course. They all knew it. They all knew it. Just, I had missed it. And so, so that was very insightful to me. And maybe if I can jump also into risk management, right? 'Cause, yeah. So, one of the things, and I've encouraged people to do this, the whole career. And I think it's particularly relevant today. There's a lot of people who naturally, when they're early in their careers, sit naturally in a kind of a comfort bubble, as I call it, right? Their social media friends, their local friends, people of the same age, people of the same interests. And I understand why people would do that. There's a lot of crap out in the world, right?
Conformity bias,
Right.
yeah.
Correct. Right. Now, that's fine unless you want to progress in your career, right? That's fine unless you want your business that you started up to do really well, unless you want to move not only to the next job up in the ladder, but 2 or 3 jobs up the ladder. Well, if you're going to do any of those things, you're going to have to reach to spaces that you haven't experienced of before, right? To talk to people, the kind of which you haven't talked to before, to get challenges that you've never seen before. So how the hell do you get those experiences, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a wild and crazy hitchhiking experience going across the United States of America. This adventure in general, put yourself a little bit at risk, right? Put yourself a little bit at risk. Put yourself in circumstances that you haven't had before and see what happens, right? And learn from them. And guess what? Some of them might be mistakes, which of course are the best learning things. Some of them may be difficult, right? And particularly early in life, I'm a huge proponent of just putting yourself in sensible, right, but more adventurous, more risk-taking sets of circumstances to build up, a large dose for later in life in your career.
I think you're 100% right. I mean, one of my favorite books is Annie Duke. It's Living in Bets. if you've read that. She's a famous poker player. She talks
Yes.
about how it's easy to put yourself around others because we all want to be right, right? And it's risky or bad decision making thinking that, when you make when a good outcome happens, oh, it's because of my decision. And when a bad outcome happens, it's because of it was bad luck. No, right? And a easy way to do that is to put yourself around people who all speak the same language as you. They all think the same way as you. And then now they're confirming that your choices are right and you like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the it's going to be much harder for you to succeed long term and make better decisions if you're not putting yourself in those situations. I think you're 100% accurate of and what are some examples of things people could do to break free? I mean, are you recommending some of your book?
Well, I mean, I do think travel is an easy and enormous one to do, right? Different, you're dealing with not only different locations, but different people, different cultures, different language, different habits, different ways of doing things that will open your eyes. And I've always found the more you travel, the more you realize you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Right? Every time you go a place, I went to India. First time I went to India, I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't gone to this part of India. And then we went to another part of India. We're like, oh my goodness, we haven't been to that part of India. All of which you started to realize were all different within India, right? With different cultures, different ways of doing things, and different ways of life. And so I think travel throughout life can be enormously beneficial. I'll give you one example more recently, actually, that I think just fits this beautifully. I had a guy I just met. I was in London the last couple of weeks, and I had lunch with a guy who used to work for me, and he was from Zimbabwe originally, and his he left to come to London to work, and reasonably late in his career, he asked to take 6 months off, and he went to become a safari guide in Botswana,
How?
right? So having grown up on a farm in Zimbabwe, he knew how to do that, right? He'd grown up with the big five wandering around the farm,
Okay.
and so he went and spent 6 months working with 7 Botswanan guides and him in the Okavanga Delta, out in the wild. Now tell me, when so I missed him for 6 months. That was inconvenient for me.
Sure. Yes.
But when he came back, do you think he was a better person, a more interesting person? Do you think everyone, clients,
Have all
other
his
people,
fingers when he came back.
they all wanted to speak to him,
Yeah, and he had all of his limbs, so he was still yeah, okay. Well then, yeah.
right?
That's
So about he did that in his late 40s, right? This is not just a young in life thing. So it's always inconvenient. It's always the wrong time. Do it.
do it. I'm with you. I think, that's really when you get the mirror back of yourself, and who you want to become and what's out there. So I think traveling's good. I mean, another easy way for in business is just to pick a new type of event to go to. That can be an easy one, once a week or once a month. Pick another event
Yeah.
with another association, a lunch and learn. And
Oh,
and if you have no
yeah, opens your mind. And the other thing I would say with doing events, right, that I've learned later in life was similar to the hitchhiking experience, right? So one of the things you had to do as a hitchhiker is so you're standing on the side of the road, you're trying to get from A to B, you got a sign. So a car stops, you jump in, right? Because they're going in your direction, they're offering you a ride. Now, what happens then? Well, effectively, most people have picked you up partly to help someone, but also they want a little light entertainment, right? They're bored. They're sitting in the car on their own. They're driving, X 100 miles, right? Oh, I'll pick that guy up, right? And they'll give them someone to talk to.
okay.
And right. So
Before social media, so that makes sense. This is like back in the 80s, like where
but this is real.
oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, right? So I'm happy you made the social media connection, but this is real, right? So one of the things I always said, you never fall asleep in a car like that, right? You have to be on your toes, and you have to, if from the moment you sit down, you need to engage, right? And you need to engage in a way that is doing a couple of things. One, you're finding what they want to talk about and what's interesting to them. And also, you're making a judgment, am I safe?
And
Right. So
what if you don't feel safe? What do you do then? You tuck and roll?
I had a number of incidents. And this comes to, again, difference between social media, right? And actual, real sitting in front of people, looking them in the eyes and having to make judgments. Again, critical in business, right? And so guess what? I had a guy who picked me up, who became actually when I was going to Grand Canyon, who it became very evident after a while, middle-aged man, that actually, to put it succinctly, he wanted me to come back to his home, right, on the offer of free laundry and a good shower, and then he would return me to the road the next morning. So and that crept up in the conversation bit by bit, right? And I found out afterwards there was a group of them who were doing this constantly, picking up hitchhikers, mostly from Europe, on the way to the Grand Canyon. And so you have to assess the situation and the person, pretty quickly. And
You were with them? Were they chopping them up and throwing them in the Grand Canyon, or was it?
no, sexual failures.
Oh, okay. So, but they were, I guess, had a new experience.
And you say the chopping up piece because I had that experience as well.
Oh,
And so, but this one was, he just, that's what his interest was. And I assessed, and I think correctly from what I heard out afterwards, that he would have returned me to
so you give it a thumbs down, is what I'm guessing.
So at that point, right, then you have to extricate yourself without making it worse.
Right.
You're in his truck, his pickup truck, right? So you have to judge the situation, understand the situation, observe the guy, tone of voice, body language, right, and the likes. And in that situation, came very clear, very politely, right, without making the situation more aggressive, right? I'm sorry, I'm ready to get out of this truck right here, right now. Thank you very much. This is not for me, right? Stop here. I'm getting out, right? Which he did, right? So that was fine. I had a situation where I was trying to cross Death Valley. And I got picked up by a guy to try and get across 250 miles to get to Las Vegas, as one does. And he picked me up. And at the first major turnoff, about 60 miles into Death Valley, he said, "Oh, I'm turning off here. I'm going to drop you off." And I'm like, drop me off in the middle of Death Valley? Are you kidding? It was like nighttime. I mean, I had no way of getting out that night. It's a very dangerous place at night, very hot, amongst other things. And so we ended up in a bit of an argument about it. And there was a sense I had, again, that this is not a good person to get into an argument with. That spending the night on my own, out on the side of the road in Death Valley, was a better option than trying to convince him. No, now in this case, take me back to your house. Right? Which seemed a much better situation, right? And again, when I went back to revisit that place in 2024, I had an experience talking to 3 bikers, call it biker wisdom. And who were just sitting outside a motel with their Harleys, big old wizened 55-year-old guys with beards and, leather jackets. And I told them the story. And they, we were, at this place, and they said, "Let me tell you what was happening there." They said the guy was going to pick you up. He was going to rape you. He was going to cut you up into small pieces, and he was going to put you a hole in the desert. And he said, "There's a lot of holes in the desert. No one would find you for a month." He said, "Did anyone even know that you were out there?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
And he said, somewhere along, right, because he picked you up and you were trying to get across the desert. Somewhere along that first hour, he changed his mind. Did something, you said something, made him change his mind. But the relevant point was that I was making a judgment call. Don't push this. This guy, I'm not comfortable with this guy.
Yeah.
And then I'll throw a third one in, not to get too long, right? So I got to New York somehow, somewhere, and was ended up on the subway, run out of money. Had now 5 days to go before my flight left. Not a place you could sleep out. I decided New York City. And so I was
Not recommended. Yeah.
not particularly in 1980.
Yeah.
So a bit of a mess, right? Bit of a difficult slot. And I was on the subway. There were two other people on the subway. They were clearly gay. This was 1980, and they were hitting on me. Right now,
I mean, I saw pictures.
and so you got to put in context the previous two stories I said, right? Right. So you'd think I'd be freaking out by now,
Right.
but there was something about them that seemed, kind. They invite.
Right.
They invited me.
Like, but flattering maybe more.
Yeah, and they listen to this. They invited me back to their apartment, a friend's apartment, to meet some of their other friends. I thought, I know what that's going to be, and so there were about a dozen gay male guys, in their 20s at this apartment in New York City. So all with their, I had my antenna up, they had their antenna up. I'm like, but boy, I really needed somewhere to sleep, and I really needed a meal. And well, the end result of that evening was the two guys I met on the subway decided they would go back to one of theirs apartment in the city for the next few days, and they gave me the other apartment for 5 days. Gave me the key, said, give it to the lady downstairs when you leave, in 5 days' time. Have a good time in New York City.
Wow, that's so nice.
Right? But again, right, looking at people, assessing people in business, and all the big things you do in business. You do lots of little things. All the big things. You're acquiring a company, right? You're selling a company. You're hiring a key individual, right? No one has perfect information what's right or wrong, right? Otherwise, someone else would have done it. You're looking someone in the eye, and you're making a judgment call. Do I go with this, or do I not? And so in little ways, I don't want to overemphasize, in little ways, I started to learn that very early on in life. And that proved to be very helpful and beneficial.
Wow. That's really, I think it's, that's one of my fears. I mean, I have a daughter who's gonna be 11, right? And I mean, of course, she's an only child like I was, so she's can talk but some of her friends, when I like experience them, right, and they almost like because they're on their phones all the time or looking down and on social. I worry if they have that ability to make judgment calls.
Yeah.
It seems like
And very difficult
yeah.
for a mother of a single child, right? Very difficult to say, oh, off you go. I mean, that's enormously difficult to do. But you can do little things in that space, right? You can do little things in that space. You don't have to drop them in Death Valley and say, I'll see you in 6 weeks.
Oh yeah, in like different sports. He's gonna be starting a new school, and even though I was an only child, I went to camps and things like that, and I think there's always something you can do. I think it's really how is our spidey senses going to change with AI, as a for instance.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one for me. Just the other day, I met with someone who was showing me kind of video, like augmented video. So I could have Anna AI version where, it would look like me and it would be doing, basically a podcast just like this.
Yeah.
I could record in advance or, give it a script and it would go out and kind of record its own podcast. And it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And right away, I was exhilarated. At the same time, it was very scary because it made me think like, being like a public figure, what is the barrier there of like, this is real Anna and this is not real Anna, this is fake Anna, right?
Yeah.
And now how, we're talking about security, how that is being translated into serious fraud. Like,
Yeah.
you get an email from the president and you click on it, it's a Zoom request, it's the president telling you to transfer money, right? And now it's not, it's AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how are we going to use these spidey senses in a world where, we have so much more to be thoughtful about, right? It's not, yeah.
Very scary. And I would say, again, trying to kind of link it back to some learnings I've had from some of my experiences, right, would be experience it, don't ignore it, right? So if it happens, you just given a very good example of its impact on you. So understand that. Don't walk away from it. Understand what just happened. Understand how that worked. Just ask a few more questions, right? And I always think that is helpful in doing it. I spent the end of my career. Who would think this? In my consulting business, working for people heavily involved in the crypto industry, right? So, AI related, right? New tech, right? And new tech that people are scared of, right? As the majority of people's initial instinct, right? Particularly people in my social structure, right? It'll surprise you, but I'm over 30, and I find that most people over 50, if you say the words crypto, the word association is financial crime, right? And it's going to zero. They just see it as an investment arm, and they can't get beyond that to understand what it is, how it could work, how it could benefit people, and just listen and understand. Maybe they might not like to have any involvement with it, but similar to your AI story, rather than just say it's going to take my job and I'm scared about it, right? Just try and ask a few more questions about it, right? Try and understand it. Again, it's like me getting in a car, hitchhiking, right? Okay, so who am I speaking to, right? What do they do? Don't just say, oh, you're in banking. Oh, you're in AI. Oh, you're in, marketing. You got to ask them some questions. Life is a learning experience, right? Ask.
I feel like we almost need to, because I was talking with my mother the other day, right? Because another thing we've been hearing, and I work in a lot of digital fraud. Like one of my book is about protecting yourself from ad fraud, right? But now that it's changing, is another, for instance, we've been getting reports where women, especially elder mothers, are getting calls and they answer, and it sounds like their child has been kidnapped. Okay, and it sounds just like their child, right? And of course, the immediate response is panic, and so I was telling my mom and my daughter about it, and she's like, "We need like a," and just to your point, like, what are those questions? And I constantly get asked, how can we protect ourselves better? It's like, well, I think one of the things now is it's like we have to be asking those questions all the time in every situation, because we don't know we can't trust voice, we can't trust video, we can't trust, so it's like, what are those questions that we have from the playbook, right? Of the hitchhiker playbook almost, of, okay, I'm going to say, it sounds real. This is a question I'm going to ask that no bot would know or no AI could know, and what are those safeguards that we can now implement in our lives to protect us in this ever evolving space?
So let me give you context as well, right, with what you're dealing with. Communications is so immediate and live for everyone, right? As you've been talking about, there may be fraudulent communication, right? But it's instant and it's thorough. So when I left on my trip to come to the United States, my parents knew that I was flying to LA, hitchhiking across to Washington, D.C., spending 4 or 5 weeks studying in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and then flying home. There were no smartphones back then. This is 1980. There weren't even those big, large handheld phones you could carry, satellite phones.
Yeah, nope. I got those in like the in the early 90s, right? I mean, I think my mom got when I was like 12. She got one, like her whole purse, she had like
So the only phone call I remember making was from a youth hostel in Washington, D.C., where I stood in line waiting for the phone on the wall to become available, and then ran in all the quarters that I had accumulated to try and get like a 1.5-minute conversation on it. It's the only phone call I made in 7 weeks.
Wow.
Right? My parents had said, try and send us some postcards. Apparently, I thought I had, but I didn't.
You're so busy having fun, right?
And so I was able to get hold of them to tell them I was going to be back a week late, because I extended my tour to New York City, and therefore to not come to the train station to pick me up in England on the prearranged date. So for 7 weeks, they had a minute and a half's communication with their son. Right? I was 20 years of age, right, in a different continent. And apart from being a little disturbed that I hadn't spent much time studying in the Library of Congress on that trip, and I'd lost like 25 pounds of weight, they were kind of like, welcome home. And so somehow it all turned out okay, right? And now we're in an environment where you can't go 5 minutes, without checking and concerning and identifying. So we can't go backwards in life. But you just have to build in business, as well as in family life, a structure of trust with people and in processes that will work, right? And go with it. Otherwise, you'll consume yourself. As I say, you're talking about family, but it's very relevant in business.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's got to be, we have to have the protocols. And that's what I help a lot of companies with their technology transformation as well. And it's like, hey, no matter who calls you or who Zooms with you, you still need to fill out the form. I don't care if it's the CEO or not, right?
I have a process,
And I
right?
have to, exactly. And it's to help everyone, and there's reasons for it, and we don't break the process, but it's really interesting what's, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, gosh, I love to watch timepieces. I mean, just think about when they got on the boat over to America, and they may not have heard. I mean, 6 weeks, 7 weeks is not even that long.
Weeks, yeah.
It would have been so much longer than that, and yeah, we're very fortunate now to have all this technology, even that we're speaking on right now. Are you in London right now?
I'm actually in New York.
I love London.
Yeah, I just got back, right? And here's something, right? Again, for people getting business lessons out of these type of experiences. I've never done a trip I just did to London before. I went and spent 2 weeks in London, meeting people. We ended up calling it the People Tour. So it was a vacation, but I wasn't going anywhere, except where I was invited to go to lunch or dinner. And which was 12 dinners and 9 lunches over 2 weeks. And I wasn't going for a wedding. I wasn't going for a conference. I wasn't going for a funeral. I wasn't going for a seminar. I was going to meet people. And again, I think, part of it's me, right? You go on the kind of journeys I've been on and had the experience I've had in the books, you really realize how important people are in your relationships to the person, right? And you can't do everything on your own. You're extremely dependent on the people around you. And for all the Taj Mahals and Sydney Opera Houses and pyramids in Egypt that I love to go and see as I travel, the most fascinating things to see and spend time with are people.
I agree. Well, that's a perfect place, I think, to end. Thank you so much for being here. For all my listeners, Graham's book is coming out on August 12th, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's going to be on your website, broydpartners.com.
/books. That's where you find all the
books. Okay, good.
Yeah.
You can have Graham on LinkedIn. And what else?
You can pre-buy it now, right? You can pre-buy it now, but you can't read it till August 12th. The print comes out in August 12th. And we're actually
audiobook as well, I'm guessing.
Audiobook. Yeah.
And are you doing the voiceover, or did you have one of the Forbes people do it?
So Forbes said, don't do it, Graham.
Yeah, I told me the same thing. Well, I mean, also, I'm a very fast talker, and apparently you have to speak 6 times slower than normal. And I was like,
and it was really, they're my stories. Yours is a very different type of book. These are my stories. And right. Guess what? I have an odd accent, right? So try replicating Graham Broyd's accent, right? Not easy. And so they kept on saying, don't do it. I did it. And actually, I love doing it.
Oh, good.
And some of the people who I know who will enjoy hearing some of these stories wanted to hear it in my voice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think that would be fun. I mean, you have a nice voice to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I did it, and so they're just doing the final edits on that now. And to your point, all the 18 of the 19 edits, the last round of edits, length of pause. Wasn't one change in the words. It was the gap between when you said this and then you started saying this was too short or too long. So
Did they extend that on their own, or did you have to re-record it?
oh, I had a very good studio. They can just do that. They
Okay,
just,
'cause, I'm working on my second book right now, which I am going to self-publish. It's about the solar coaster. And I was thinking about maybe recording it because, I talk a lot about solar and people know me and they're all asking about it. And then I was just thinking, I'm like, well, what if they could just slow it down in post?
yeah.
Yeah.
They can, if you get it, good. I couldn't do that. I had a very good studio director who that was very simple for.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I hope people enjoy it. But
We'll find out. I might give it a whirl. We'll see how it goes. But first, I have to finish the book. I'm in my second round here of editing. So, but
well, you should take my advice. You should take a little pause in all the hard, frantic work we do,
okay.
and open back that Jackie Surfboard on August 12th.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. Definitely, we gotta do our book swap, and then we'll do a little post before the pod goes live for all of our listeners. So again, it's available. It's coming out officially August 12th, but you can pre-order your copy now and help it get all the attention it deserves. And I know that maybe coming soon there might be some other exciting news, maybe some movie or other series deals. But Graham will fill us in as we get confirmations.
Lovely. Anna, lovely to speak to you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. So for all my listeners, please join me next week as I interview another industry expert to help you succeed on and offline. Make sure to go to the Covert Code and subscribe to your favorite stream. We're on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. And I'll see you next week in the Pixels. Aloha. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Covert Code podcast. To stay up to date with all our future episodes, follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means everything to us. Please take a moment to leave a review and share our content with your friends and colleagues on social media. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more digital innovators like yourself. See you in the Pixels. Aloha.